Boker Tov. Good morning. Today's daf Yomi is Bava Basra daf Lamed, and we're going to start on the bottom of Chaf Tes on a base 29b, 7 lines from the bottom. Today's daf is dedicated for Shmira, for the Chayalim Atzah, for the Shmuliyim and Yeshua, for Am Yisrael. This daf we could really spend an entire Zman on, but we will do it as a daf yomi. So the Gemara comes on the bottom of 29b and gives the following case. There was a person who said to his friend, we'll call him the Ma'arer, he's coming and raising an issue. My bias, Bahai Besa, what are you doing in my house? So the Machzik, the person number two, says, I bought the house from you, and I've been here. The year is required to establish a chazaka, the 3 years. Amar way, the guy says, no. The Ma'ara says, you didn't establish a chazaka. I was living in the inner room. And the way Rashbam explains it, and I was coming out and I was using your outer area as an egress. So that's proof that I was making a macha. I was objecting to what you were doing. So therefore, you don't have a chazaka. So coming to Rav Nachman, so they came to Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman said, "I'm going zeal beror achilasla." So Rav Nachman says to the machzik, to the person who was living there, you have to prove that you were living there without him walking through. You have to prove that you really do have a chazaka. But came to Rava. Rava was Rav Nachman's student. He says, Dina Hachi, is this really the truth? The Machzik is living there. Hamotzi mechavero al haraya. We have a concept, the burden of proof rests upon the person who wants to take away the money. So the Ma'arar is trying to get the money from the Machzik. He's trying to kick him out. He has to bring the proof. So therefore, we're saying Hamotzi mechavero al haraya. So Rav Nachman says the Machzik has to bring the proof, and Rav Nachman says the Machzik has to bring the proof, and Rava says the Ma'arar has to bring the proof. So Rami, the Rava, Rami, the Rav Nachman, the Rav Nachman. This contradicts another case of Rava and another case of Rav Nachman. This is the second case. We're going to have on our daf around 7 cases today, so maybe 6 cases. Now, the Amrway Lechavre, there was a person who said to his friend, Kol Nichse de Bei Bar Sisin Mizabina Lacha. So the top of Lamed Amana Aleph, somebody said to his friend, listen, all the assets of Bar Sisin, I'm selling to you. I bought the portfolio of Bar Sisin, and I'm selling all of them to you. So, Kol Nilse de Bei Bar Sisin is Abina Lacha. Haveahi Ara Have Mikri de Bei Bar Sisin. But the smoker, the seller, he had another piece of property that was called Bar Sisin. But Amrei Holav de Bei Bar Sisin he. But the seller says, this is not Bar Sisin property. I'm just calling it Bar Sisin, but it's not a Bar Sisin property. Because, Rashbam explains, maybe he inherited it from his father, but it wasn't part of the portfolio of Bar Sisin. So, but the guy who bought it says, yeah, I bought all of your Bar Sisin portfolio. That includes this one. So also coming to Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman, who remember in the other case that we just had, Rav Nachman says that the one who has it, the Machzik, has to prove that he was really has a chazaka. So here in this case, here in this case, he gives it to the purchaser. Doesn't say the purchaser needs to prove it. He gives it to the purchaser. And Amrei Rava, so it's the opposite of what he said before, because there in the earlier case, he had said the Machzik, who's equivalent to the purchaser, presumably is the one who has to prove it. And here he gives it to the purchaser, and he says the seller has to prove it wasn't part of it. So Amrei Rava, Dina Achi, Rava says, is this really the case? You have to bring a burden of proof. One who wants to bring a proof has to get it out. So the purchaser has to bring it. So therefore, here he's using a motzi mechaver ol varaya, but he's supporting the seller in this case. So that's like supporting the ma'arer. So it's the opposite of what he learned before. So Kasha the Rava, Kasha the Rav Nachman, the Rav Nachman. It seems to contradict what Rava said before and what Rav Nachman said before. So the Gemara says, no. The Rava will Kasha. It's not a contradiction of Rava. Why? Hasam Mokar Kai B'Nechse. In the case of the Bar Sisin, the reason why Rava says the purchaser has to bring a proof is because the seller is the one who still has it. So it's a motzim chavero of arayas. The burden of proof rests on the one who wants to get it. It's just in a different place. But in Hacha, in our case here, i.e. the case of the Shchuna Gavai, the person who's living inside, there in our case over here, the purchaser, i.e. the machzik, is the one who has it, and so therefore the ma'ara has to bring the proof. So he's saying motzi mechaver of araya. It's just a question who still has it. In the case of shulach kavai, the purchaser already had it in his possession. In the case of Arsisin, the seller still has it in his possession. Rav Nachman nominal kasha. According to the case of Rav Nachman, is also not contradictory. Why? Because Rav Nachman rules in the case of shchuna gavai that the machzik is the one who has to prove it, and here he says that the lokeach is the one who has to prove it. Why? So Rav Nachman kiva the amay the bar sisin, since he says I'm selling you the bar sisin portfolio, mikre de bar sisin, and it's called bar sisin. Alei day rami leguliye, and it's his responsibility to prove it to have bar sisin. It's his responsibility to prove that it's not really a case of bar sisin. Avohacha. But in our case over here, meaning to say in the case of the Shchuna Gavai, in our case over here, the property inside is like he's holding a contract. And so Milo Amrina, well, since you're holding a contract, don't we say about somebody who holds a contract? Don't we say you have to ratify your contract and then you get to keep it? So that's what I'm saying to him. You want to claim you're a machzik, just have to ratify it. Okay, we're on the bottom of 30A. We're going to have the third case of today's daf, and then we're going to have the fourth case all on daf lamed. So 30A, around 10 lines on the bottom. The third case. Ahu the Amrway, my bias by Besa. So somebody says to a person, what are you doing in my house? So he says, what do you mean, what am I doing here? Amrei, minachsa binte, I bought the house from you. Va'achalte shani chazaka. I bought the house for you, and I've been here 3 years. Now we have a case called Shuki Barai. It says, I bought the house from you, I've been living for 3 years, and you didn't object. So the ma'arer, i.e. the seller, says, yeah, that's because the reason why I didn't object is Bishuki Barai Havi. I was Shuki Barai, Rashbam says, I was far away. I wasn't in town. I was in a faraway place, and I didn't know what was going on, and therefore I didn't object. So you have not established a chazaka. Amarei, but the purchaser says, or the machzik says, Isli Sahadi, but I have witnesses, the Kol Shata, of Asus Plus and Yomin. It's like you, Eric. Every year he comes home for 30 days. he's in his home for 30 days. Does that have proof? So he says, no. Amarei, the seller or the ma'arer, says, no. Plus and Yomi Beshukai Avetarina. Yeah, I was technically in state, but it doesn't mean I was sitting around looking at my real estate holdings. I was busy selling my merchandise that I bought. And Rashbam says, I had no idea that you were living there, and I was living in a different home. I had no idea. So therefore, I didn't know. This is the case of Shuki Barai and Amarava. Avid Inish, the cold plus Yomi, Tari Bishuka. Yeah, that's the truth. All 30 days, a person could be involved in his business, and he wouldn't know. And therefore, he has a good reason why he didn't make a macha, didn't object. So therefore, the chazaka is not a chazaka. So now we have the fourth case of our daf. Ahuda Amro Elchavre, my bias Bahai Arai. So the guy says to his friend, what are you doing in my land. So now this is the case of Mipolanya Zabinte Zabina Minach. That's what this case is known as. So he says, the guy says to his friend, what are you doing in my land? So the Ma'arer is the one who makes the claim, says, you're in my property. And the Machzik says, I bought it. This is why you never do anything without a lawyer present. This case proves it. He says, so the Machzik, let's call him Ruvain, says, I bought it from Shimon. And Shimon told me, Shimon told me that he bought it from you. Oh, that's a big problem. The Reuven just messed himself up completely with that claim. That is a real mess up. Why? The Amalei, at lav kamodis, so the Ma'arer, the person who's making the accusation, says to him, are you not admitting, at lav kamodis, are you not admitting, top of 30b, the high aradidihi, are you not admitting, you just admitted that it was originally my land. Number two, you're admitting the atlos of bintaminai. You're admitting you never purchased it from me. You're saying, Zio, go, you have nothing to do with me. You're out. And Amarava Dina ka Amarle. Rava says, yeah, that is a good claim. Let's break it down. Basically, you what your claim is, you're saying you admit that you didn't buy it from me. You're saying you bought it from somebody else who told you that he bought it from me. But therefore, you don't have a claim. You don't have a claim that you bought it from me. Your only claim is that you bought it from this person. That's not a claim. That's not a claim. And so therefore, since nobody ever has a claim, I have the contract and nobody has a claim against me, therefore, we're going to put it in the hands of the Ma'arer, the person who has the contract and is waiving it, and he's saying it's mine. Why? And the reason is, Rashbam says, the kiva demoda to shaloya karka mitchila, Ruvain, who is the machzik, is admitting that the Ma'arer had it initially. So it doesn't even matter whether or not Ruvain established a chazaka, because even if he had it for 3 years, it's not a chazaka, because it's a chazaka without a valid claim, because he doesn't know if what he bought from Shimon really had the right to sell. He didn't prove that it was ever Shimon's. And so therefore, since he never proved that it was Shimon's, it's like even though he has a chazaka, he doesn't have a valid taina. And so therefore, it goes back to the Ma'arer. And okay, Reuven, okay, he's out of money, but he could go to Shimon to try to get it. Good luck if Shimon's not an honest guy. And Amarava Dina Kamrali. Rava says, yes, indeed, that's accurate. And now we go up to the fifth case. Each case you could spend a few weeks on. We're just giving it a short duty. Case number 5. Ahuda Amrei Chavre, my boss by Ara. So the Ma'arer says to the Machzik, what are you on my property for? Amrei, Mipalanya Zabina, Va'achalti Shnei Chazaka. So that's the Machzik, let's call him Ruvain, says, I bought it from Shimon, and I've been here 3 years. So the Ma'arer says, Amrei, Palanya Gazlanahu. He says, the guy you bought it from stole it from me. He stole it from me. He had no rights to it. But Reuven's not done. Reuven says, Isli Sahati, but I have witnesses that Asai Imlichi Becha, that I went and I asked you, should I buy this property from Shimon? Reuven says to the Ma'arer, I went and I have witnesses that I went to you and said, do you think I should buy this property? It's a good deal. Va'amarsli, and you said to me, Zil Zubin, you told me to go buy it. And now you're telling me he's a thief? Amar way. So the Ma'arer says, yeah, I told you to get it because Hasheni Noachli Harishon Kashe Meno, because I knew I had no chance of getting it out from him. but you, I thought I could get it from. Shani Noachli. Number two is easier for me to collect the money from. Then number one, I would have the number one is harder. Meaning to say, yeah, I told you to get it because I thought that way I could go take you to court to recover my property. But from the first guy, I wouldn't have been able. His lawyers are too good. Amar Rava, Dina ka Amarway. Rava says that's correct. That's a correct ruling. He was able to say that. And even though he's not doing the right thing, nevertheless, he's maybe in violation of Lifnei Yiver, violation, as the Sma says, he's violating the prohibition of giving somebody bad advice. Nevertheless, it's still his property. And this is like Anmon, the Tanan, that let's say we have this Mishnah Subos. Let's say somebody says, this is my field. The Chosim aid. So, but yet he's the signator. What's going on here? Reuben sold the field to Shimon, and well, let's say like this: Shimon sold the field to Levi, and on that contract of the sale of Shimon to Levi, one of the witnesses is Reuben. But now Reuben comes along and says to Levi, "That's my field." But Levi says, "But you signed on it." He says, "Yeah, because I wanted to get it away from Shimon so that I can make a claim against you." So under those circumstances, Amnon says, yeah, we believe him, that that's a legitimate claim, that he could say, the second one is believed to me, but not the first. The second one's easier for me, not the first one. So Rabba's ruling is like Amon, but not like the Chachamim, because the Chachamim say, Chachamim say, once you sign something, you lost your rights to it. So he signed it that was a valid sale from Shimon to Levi. That means he's forfeited his claim. So it seems like Rava is ruling like Admon against the Chachamim, which is a question. Why would you rule like Admon, an individual, against the Chachamim, which is the majority? And so are we saying that that's the case? The Gemara says no. Afilu tema Rabbanan. You could even say in this case that Rava is ruling like the Rabbanan. How so? Hasam avid le'maisa avahacha dibura avid inish the mikri va'amar. He says there's a crucial distinction between the two cases. In the case of Anmon, he did an actual action. He signed the document. And so since he signed the document, the Rabbanan say he did an action. And that's a higher threshold of waiver of rights. Here in this case, he just gave advice. Talk is cheap, basically. They go by it that a person would say, even though he's really the owner. But to sign something away, even though he's an owner, that's a higher threshold. And there, the Rabbanan say he waived his rights. But in speech, the Rabbanan would even agree with Anmon that he hasn't waived his rights. He's maybe just giving the guy bad advice. People don't, just so that he could reclaim his property. People don't put as much thought into speech as they do into action. Number 6. I think this is like the whole power of a notary. Like, why is a notary powerful? I mean, you're just getting somebody to say it's you, but the idea is he caused somebody to sign something is the higher threshold of fraud, basically. The 6th case, really, or it could be the 7th case, depending if we count Ammon as a separate case. Somebody says to his friend, my bias by Ara, what are you doing in my property? So he says, Amrway, he says, I'll tell you what I'm doing here. I bought it from this person and I've had it for 3 years. So basically the Ma'arer says to the Machzik, he says to, let's say, Reuben, what are you doing in my property? And Reuben says, I bought it and I've been living here 3 years. Amrway, Palanya Gazlanahu. So the Ma'arer says to Reuben, you bought it from a thief. Amrway, Va'isli Sahadi the Asis Ba'orta, Va'amrisli Zibna Nile. He said, but how can you say he's a thief? I have witnesses that you came to me at night and you, before I bought it, and you said to me, I want to buy this property. I'll buy this property for you. You're the one who tried to buy this property. Amarle. And now you're coming to me and saying it's yours. So basically the case is the Ma'ara says to the Machzik, you're my property. He says, no, I bought it. The Machzik says, I bought it from this person. So the Ma'ara says, yeah, but that guy was a thief. He said, yeah, but I have witnesses last night. You tried to buy it. He says, yeah, I tried to buy it. Why? Amina izbun dinai. I said to him, the reason why I tried to buy it was because I said, it's better off. It'll cost me less to buy it than to go to court and litigate. So I was willing to buy it back, even though it was mine. I'll pay the money because the alternative is I'll have to litigate, and I don't want to do it. So he says, Amina Amarava Avid Inish to Zabadina. Yeah, a person will sometimes buy his own assets back, even though technically speaking it's his already, but he'll do it just to avoid a dispute. So that's understandable. Well, seventh case. Ahuda Amarle, or maybe the eighth case, depending how you count. Ahuda Amarle Chavre, person says to his friend, my boss Bahai Ara, what are you doing in my property? He says, Amarle mi Palanya Zabina Vachalti Shani Chazaka. Says, what are you doing in my property? Well, I bought it from Reuben says, I bought it from Shimon, and I've been living here for 3 years. Amarle, so the Ma'ara says, you can't. Why? Nakitna shtara de zamile mine ha'arba shani. So the Ma'ara says to Reuven, you could not have bought it from him. You say you've been living here chazaka. That means you've been living here 3 years. Well, he couldn't have sold it to you. That doesn't mean anything because I bought it from him 4 years ago. And so therefore he had no right to sell it to you. So you have no claim. You have no taina. It wasn't his. It's mine because I bought it from him 4 years ago. So Amar Reuven says, no, I didn't say I bought it 3 years ago. Misavis shani chazaka plus shani. Do you think when I said I've been living here for the years of a chazaka that I meant I was living here only for 3 years? No. Shnei chazaka tuva kamina. I meant I was been living here for many years, way more. I bought it before your 4 years. I bought it more than 4 years ago. So therefore, I have established a chazaka before you bought it. Amarava. So Rava says, Avida inish dekaru shani tuva shani chazaka. So he says, yeah, a person will sometimes call many years. I've been living here for a chazaka. It doesn't only mean 3 years. It can mean much longer years. But, says the Gemara, V'hani mili de'achasheva. That's only where he's been living there at least 7 years, because this guy's claiming I bought it 4 years ago. So Reuven had to have established a chazaka so that the sale to the Ma'ara wouldn't be valid because he'd be living there for 3 years. And the first guy didn't make a objection, so it has to be a total of 7. The kadam chazaka the achasheva the kadam chazaka the high was dach, that his chazaka came prior to his contract of 4 years on top of Amud Aleph, Amud Aleph, Aval Shis. But if he was only living there for 6 years, i.e., now within the 3 years of the chazaka that Reuben was trying to establish, Shimon went ahead and sold it to the Ma'arer, then there's no objection greater than this. He clearly is making an objection. He's saying, you think you're living on there, but I'm selling the property. And so then it wouldn't be valid. So, okay, we could go on a little bit. We could continue. We have some time.